So I'm just going to get a garden rake now, and I'm just going to carefully work the ground up. It's very friable. Not everybody's garden is going to be this loose, but it's taken years of amending the soil, and you can see how it all falls apart really nice. So I try to get the soil relatively level, and I don't put strings out, but some people like to do straight rows. I'm just going to get the handle of my rake here, and I'm just going to create a small trench. These are some of the easiest vegetables to grow in the garden. So basically, small onion bulb, it's got a little spot on the bottom where are the roots, and then the pointed part is the top. And what I like to do is we try to put these in the soil, and we put them so that the tip is just going to stand out. And you can see I'm only putting them about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches apart. And then a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's way too close, because onions can get up to, say, 3 inches, maybe even 4 inches wide. But the trick is, I like to have lots of greens on my onions so that I can use them in salads through the season. And then the last ones that are still in the rows are the big ones that I can use for fall storage if I like. So I plant them really close, and then as they grow, I take every other one out. If you get a real small one like that, throw it out. With these, I've pushed them in about 2/3 of the way into the soil already. I'm not even going to cover these, because by the time it gets a little bit of a rain, or if it doesn't rain, that I get the garden hose out and give them a bit of a drink, the tops are almost going to be covered. This is Spanish onion. Spanish onion usually gets 3-4 inches. They're milder than a lot of the plants. If you like spicier onions, then you go with the red onions. You could plant them exactly the same way. You can also use the red onions, or even white, in greens for in your salads. And then again, leave the biggest ones that form through the summer for fall digging, or whenever you wish to use them. What people do if they have a small garden, they don't have a lot of room, you could plant fewer onions. I'm not even going to put any more than maybe 25 or 30 in this row, and then I'm going to save the rest in the bag. I'll put them in the fridge, keep them cool, and keep them from sprouting. And I can do some more when I have a little bit more room on my garden, say in 4 or 5 weeks. Leek is in the onion family. A lot of people like to grow leek through the whole season, and in the fall they can be sometimes up to that thick at the base, and they store very well. They can take cold. All right, they don't have to be protected from frost in the fall. And in fact, a lot of gardeners would tell you that they taste better after they've had a frost in the fall. Right, it brings out the sweetness of the plant itself. So what I've done here is I've shaken some of the dirt off. If you have a pot that's really rooted, I get a pail of water, and basically I'm just shaking the roots, get all the dirt off, and all I have is the roots left. And then they're very easy to take apart without ripping all the roots off. All right, so every one of these plants can be planted again just like we've done the onions, approximately 3 inches apart. And it'll take most of the season to finish these, but again, they can take cool weather. So I'm going to get a shovel here, and a lot of people say, well, Ken, how come you're growing in raised beds? A, the body doesn't like bending down to the ground anymore from years of gardening. Secondly, you'll notice that all my soils, even though it's been a really wet spring, all my soils are dry enough that I can work. Raised beds drain way faster than a garden that's in ground level. So I can get in the ground usually at least 2 weeks earlier than anybody else can to get a good start. So I've made the trench about 3 inches deep, and basically I'll just put a plant in like this, put the roots down in the bottom. Don't have to be real fussy on how deep you plant them, but you want the roots all covered. Again, just lightly firm so that they stand straight. And press the soil around it. Don't have to pack it real hard, but enough that they don't flop over. So most people get frustrated in gardening because the soil's horribly hard or very dry or a lot of weeds in the garden, and it gets a little frustrating to get started in the spring. As we go through the series of garden plantings, I'm going to show you tricks of the trade so that you don't get a lot of weeds in your garden beds. And the rule, even in our garden center, is you see one little weed, you pick it out right away. If you leave something and let it seed, you got 100 or 200 seeds next time. All right, so a little bit of diligence in keeping up at it in the beginning makes our life a lot easier. And the first year you start a garden, if you have new soil, you're going to find that there's going to be a significant amount of weeds in new soil. Any soil that's worth its weight in gold is going to have weeds in it. If it doesn't have weeds in it, there must be some kind of herbicide that's been used or something like that, and you don't want that. I typically do not use pesticides or chemical fertilizers in my garden. I like to use organic matter. And last year I planted all my vegetables, and about a week or week and a half after I planted, once they got a root in the ground, I went by with some granulated chicken manure, and I just side dressed that. We'll show you how to do that in one of our following videos. So here again, you know, got an 8-foot bed, and 8 foot planting the leek is going to give you a lot of material in the fall. If you have a lot of plants and you think, well, that's way too much, even in July or August, if they're getting decent size, don't be afraid to pull a few out, the bigger ones, and use them in your cooking already. You don't have to leave it till fall. We store very little material that I grow. Our aim is to have fresh vegetables all season long, and that allows us to, I think the taste is way better than you'll ever buy in the grocery store. And once you've tasted fresh snow peas right out of the garden, I'm sure you'll agree with me. So there, I put them about 3 inches apart, and one of the little 4-inch pots, just enough to finish it up. Right, I'll come by later and water these, or it's going to rain tonight, I heard anyway, so maybe I won't have to. But don't leave them sitting in the sun for 4 or 5 hours, because they'll start to wilt, especially once you bare root something. Get a garden hose and give them a quick drink. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put some of these cauliflower in. Like I was mentioning earlier, we want as big a plant as possible to get started, and you want to start hopefully by the 15th, 20th of April. If you leave it till about middle of May, you're going to find that they're going to head up in the heat and they won't taste as well, or sometimes they'll bolt or go a bad color. So this is a 4-inch pot again. This is a variety called Minuteman. It's one of the hybrid varieties. It's a fairly quick growing one, so before the heat we hope to have a head, and we should get a decent sized head. Maybe not massive, but I'm talking probably an 8-inch head out of one of these plants. So what I've done is I put onions in the one row, I've put leek in the other row. So you're going to say, well, they're going to stay very small for a long period of time, and you're right. So what I do in the middle of the garden of that same bed, I just get my hand, I can dig just with my hands. I'm going to set the plant in there. I'm going to put a little bit of dirt over the root ball, lightly firm it in. So then I've got a garden that's going to bring me some late season material. The broccoli will be out of here in about 6 weeks, and as that grows, the broccoli will be gone. We'll have more room for the plants that are still here. And we're putting them about 18 inches apart, because broccoli and cauliflower are going to get a good size leaf on it. And we want enough soil volume to be able to feed each plant sufficiently with moisture and nutrients. So You'll find that if you amend your soil every year, a lot of people like to use organic matter like compost or rotted horse or cow manure or sheep manure. I always say anything organic that you can work into your soil is good. Most soils in our fields around here are about 3 or 4% organic matter, which is very low. In a vegetable garden, if you're attentive to adding as much material as you can could easily get it up to 20-30% without really trying hard. And then my soil's always this easy to work with. I don't even need a shovel. I could dig with my hands if I wanted to. Right? So now I have 4. You might want to put one of the tags in, unless you got a really good memory. So you can see the lumps of peat moss in this garden yet. But basically, if I just work it with the rake, it only takes me less than a minute. Just break up the lumps a little bit. You can see it all falls apart and just nice crumbly soil. And you can tell that the ground around here is really wet yet. These gardens are just gorgeous for working. And for those who have trouble bending down, you know, these beds are about just under 2 feet in height. It helps a lot later on the season too when you have to do some weeding. You don't have to bend all the way to the ground. I usually sit on the edge of the garden here and I can just reach in and pick out the weeds. Yep. Don't have to make it into a powder. Like if you had a rototiller and you rototill the garden, you don't need to go over it 10 times. As soon as it's crumbly enough that you can work it easily, I don't care about a few crumbs or lumps in here. As long as I can get in here and actually do my planting, I don't need to work it anymore. A lot of people work their gardens too much and you ruin the structure of the soil. So you can see all the hair root. That's a really good sign. These are all in a potting mix. But, oh, I noticed something here. This one has 2 plants in the pot. I just made 2 pots. 2 plants out of 1. That's what Dutch people do. Oh, save some money.